I want to talk about K-12 taxpayer-funded public schools and what is being described as book banning. You've probably seen it on social media, maybe read or heard about it in the news. Texas is making news specifically, but lots of states are doing this. They are heeding the requests of parents to pull books from the school library, to look at them, to audit them, and see if they are appropriate to have in a K-12 school. And this is being described as book banning. Well, what is a book ban? A book ban means you can't buy the book. You can't get the book out of any library. You can't really read the book in public. I mean, we're talking about the book is removed from circulation. You can't even go to Amazon and find it. Okay? That would be a book ban. Removing books from a public school library where the books are paid for and maintained using taxpayer dollars, where the students exposed to the books are minors below the age of 18, is not a book ban. It is not. It is setting standards, possibly realigning standards. It might be an audit for appropriateness. It's a lot of things that aren't a ban. Nobody is telling you or your child that you cannot go purchase the book for your child for them to read on their own time in your home, using your money. Go right ahead. But you don't have an inalienable right to use my money or anybody else's money to purchase books that most people think are age inappropriate to have around minor children. You don't have a right to do that. No, you don't. So it's not a violation of your free speech that these books are not there. If that were true, it would be a violation of the First Amendment that you can't go into the public school library and get the Bible or the Quran or the I Ching or whatever else. And you might actually be able to, depending on the school district, but you probably wouldn't be able to teach that book in the classroom. I'm not even sure the student could read the book, even in a humanities class. But let's say I'm wrong and there are schools where you can go get a copy of the Bible for humanities or history purposes, but the teacher's not going to be teaching it and getting all the kids to read from the books of the Bible. So the teacher doesn't have unlimited free speech to teach anything they want in a K-12 public school. And the students can't even walk in and get access to all kinds of books. You can't go into the public school library, for example, and get old copies of Hustler or Playboy. And most of those just have pictures. Playboy is just pictures of naked people. They're not even actually engaged in the pages of Playboy and sex. Very suggestive pictures, but they're not actually pornographic, ironically. And yet, I don't think anyone out there would say that they should suddenly have a stack of Playboys in the K-12 library. But what people are arguing for are graphic novels that depict in graphic fashion sex between adults and minors, sex between two males, two females, etc., all different kinds of sex. And what I'm hearing from people is, you're a prude. This is a puritanical backwards view. Why shouldn't children learn this? This is how they feel good about themselves. This is how they learn that sex is about pleasure. Well, I've looked at some of these books and I'm not seeing a whole lot of discussion in them about how sex is even about pleasure. A lot of rebelliousness, a lot of sticking it to the parents, a lot of experimentation for its own sake. A lot of compare and contrast and one-upsmanship and coming-of-age issues, which could be equally well taught using other coming-of-age novels that are better written and don't involve graphic depictions of sex, as I said, sometimes between minors and adults. So it's not a book ban. And I actually don't think that the people wanting to remove these books have the obligation to explain why. I don't. I think the opposite is true. When you're dealing with minor children and taxpayer dollars, the obligation is on the people who want to spend the dollars and want to put the books in front of the children. They should merit that. They should have to justify spending that money. And something winning awards or lots of people liking it doesn't really qualify. Explain why this book is specifically appropriate for this age group. Use objective evidence. And you better be prepared to explain why this book and not some other book. So that's another question that we parents have is, okay, let's say we meet you halfway and we agree that there is value in coming of age literature. In other words, literature that has as its theme children grappling with breaking away from their parents, becoming adults, forming their own unique identities, etc. Let's say we agree that there's value in reading stories about people who are engaged in that activity. Let's say we buy into the whole relatable issue that I discussed in my last video, just with that coming of age need, not necessarily the other specifics like what they look like and what decade they live in and things like that, but just the issue of, young people grow to be adults. That happens. There are so many high quality books that don't contain that much graphic sex that the students could read, where they would improve their vocabulary, where they would even learn about English prose in a more challenging way, that have other themes besides, possibly that even teach a little history while they're at it, etc. There are more classic works. Why these books? Why must they be the new ones? What is inherently more valuable about Lawn Boy, for example, than some other books about a young boy's coming of age? That the onus should be on the educators and the librarians to explain that. And simply, it got great reviews or it's won awards or it's the latest, greatest cutting edge thing and I'm so in with the new is not a reason. It isn't. And parents have every right to question material that heretofore was not contained in K-12 libraries. No, our children managed to come of age, make it to adulthood without committing suicide, make it to adulthood without, having some other negative outcome for generations without reading about sucking, what, in the bushes when they were in 4th grade. And people might say, but these things happen in real life. Maybe they do. Does it then follow that all the children need to read about it? Is it appropriate when it happens in real life? Why? Just because something happens in real life doesn't mean that everybody should read about it. Doesn't mean that it's age appropriate. Children go through lots and lots of things that we don't necessarily want other children to know about because we wish the child who went through it didn't go through it. Lots of things happen in real life. You don't need to disillusion every child. If the material is too racy and makes adults too uncomfortable to read it aloud at a school board meeting, which is the case with things like Lawn Boy and Genderqueer, then why would you want it in the school library? Just because rape happens doesn't mean kids need to read about it. So I'm sick and tired of people characterizing this as prudishness, characterizing the removal of these books as book banning, saying it's a violation of free speech. No, it's not. And at no time are the people making these accusations being asked to justify the placement of these books in these libraries. I take it back. They are being asked, but their answers are either non-answers. They just hurl invective and ad hominem at you, or they're answers that ought to be questioned even more strongly than the initial questions. So, for example, if we don't teach them this material, they'll kill themselves. Prove it. Where are you getting that information? That sounds like an appeal to emotion. It's not an argument. How do you know that? How do you know that these are even correlated? Never mind causal. And then the other one I've seen is, where else are they going to learn that sex is for pleasure if we don't discuss it in school and have these books available to them? Oh, somehow we managed. Somehow all the rest of us managed. I mean, when you listen to some of these educators talk, it's as though no other children grew to be adults successfully before now, that we've all done it wrong, that we all had no idea until we got out of school. And then it was just this horrible shock that sex could be pleasurable or should be. We had no idea to push back on people who are violating our boundaries. And isn't this ironic, coming from the same people who are daily violating our children's boundaries with intrusive questionnaires, declarations about what their identities are, whether they agree or not, based on immutable characteristics they didn't choose? Isn't that funny? They should know what consensual means, and they should know what pleasurable sex is. And I'm like, interesting. And yet, many of these same people are pushing to eliminate consent laws or reduce the age of consent to the point of absurdity. They love to talk out of both sides of their mouths. But I'm speaking mostly to those of you parents who might be inhibited about asking for these books to be removed because you don't want to be lumped in with the book banners. You don't want to be thought of as somebody who doesn't respect the freedom of speech. Well, remember that your child has more rights in the classroom than the teacher. And one of those rights is to retain their innocence as long as possible. It does have inherent value. Yes, it does. There are things you're just not emotionally or mentally prepared to deal with until you're older. And since teachers can't possibly know when that is, and you, the parents, are probably better judges, then material that is objectively adult in content, and that would be explicit sex. If you were to dramatize Lawn Boy and make it into a movie, the average child under 17 would not be allowed in without a parent or guardian. There would be at least R, if not MA. I'm going to go with MA. So if that material is mature enough for that, then you, the parent, decide on your own at home. But in a public school with tax dollars, we have to go with what is the safest. There's no inherent value in exposing them all to this. I challenge anyone to prove otherwise. So that's what I want to say about this topic. Thank you for watching. As always, please consider subscribing to the channel, like, share, comment on the video, and I'll see you in Locals, thereasonwelearn.locals.com.